She had two mothers in her life. One, her cruel stepmother, who sold her to a wicked man to seize her inheritance. The other, a tribal mother, who found her dying in the desert and protected her as her own daughter, though not of her blood. This is the story of the betrayal of blood ties and the triumph of the soul. When Olara's father, a wealthy merchant, took his last breath, he left his 17-year-old daughter not only a great inheritance, but also a stepmother, Mala, whose heart was blackened with jealousy. Mala had spent years in secret hatred, watching as the pale beauty of her own daughter, Zola, faded like a candle next to Olara's grace and intelligence. She knew that when Olara turned 18, her father's entire inheritance would legally pass to her, leaving Mala and Zola no better than servants. Therefore, weeks before Olara's 18th birthday, Mala put her cruel plan into motion. She made a secret deal with Gideon, an old and cruel landowner who lived in an unsettling valley outside of town and hated people. Gideon was known for collecting rare and beautiful things, and he wanted to add a young girl to his collection. Mala would sell Olara to Gideon in exchange for her inheritance. Olara couldn't understand why her stepmother had been so kind to her lately, having her favorite meals prepared. At that last supper, she didn't notice the tasteless herb mixed into her drink. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in a damp-smelling room with stone walls and iron-barred windows. She was no longer the heiress of her father's house, but the new collection piece in a cruel man's cage. The only sound from outside was Gideon's chilling laughter and his whisper, "You're mine now, little bird." Gideon's mansion was a prison where beauty and terror intertwined. Olara was forced to wear silk dresses and eat the most delicious meals, but she was not allowed to take a single step out of her room. Gideon visited her every day, looking at her as if inspecting a work of art, but whispering words that poisoned her soul. "Your father's inheritance is mine now. Your stepmother sold you to me. No one knows where you are, and no one is looking for you." For weeks, Olara resisted this psychological torture. She never lost hope of escape and committed every detail to memory, every guard change, every caravan arrival. The opportunity arose a month later, on the day a large caravan arrived to deliver supplies to the mansion. In a moment of chaos, Olara stole a servant's clothes and smeared her face with mud to make herself unrecognizable. She secretly slipped into the back of a canvas-covered cart that was about to leave the mansion. Her heart pounded as the cart lurched forward. For hours, perhaps even days, she hid in that shaky, dark place, terrified. But eventually, one of the caravan drivers found her during a break. The man, fearing Gideon's wrath, considered taking her back, but Olara's pleading eyes and the last jewel from her mother, which she offered him from around her neck, changed his mind. The man took the jewel, but instead of taking her to the nearest town, he threw her out of the cart on the border of a tribe's territory, miles and miles from civilization. "You're on your own from here," he said, and drove away without looking back. Olara had escaped one captivity, only to be left all alone in the merciless embrace of the wilderness. After walking for days on the verge of dying from hunger and thirst, she took shelter in the shade of a fallen tree by a riverbank. Just as she was about to lose consciousness, a shadow fell over her. When she opened her eyes, she saw an old but upright woman, her face full of lines of wisdom. This was Nia, the wise mother and healer of the River Serpent tribe. Years ago, Nia had lost her only daughter to an epidemic and had lived with that pain in her heart ever since. When she looked at Olara's exhausted face, she saw the lost soul of her own daughter in her. She could not leave this foreign girl to die. When Nia brought Olara to her tribe, the decision caused a great debate. The tribe's young and ambitious war leader, Jabari, argued that this stranger was a bad omen. "Our lands are already dry," he shouted in the council. "This outsider will anger the spirits even more. The one who brings her bears the consequences." Although Jabari respected Nia's wisdom, he believed her emotional decision would bring disaster to the tribe. The chief was caught between two respected leaders. Finally, he made his decision. Olara could stay, but under Nia's responsibility. At the slightest trouble, Alara would be handed over to the tribe's justice. Nia took Alara in as her own daughter. She began to teach her about healing herbs, the tribe's language, and their traditions. For the first time in her life, Alara experienced true motherly love. However, Jabari and his supporters were watching her every move. They were waiting for an opportunity to make her fail and fall from Nia's grace. That opportunity arose as the tribe's most important ceremony, the Harvest Festival, approached. The festival's sacred fire could only be lit by the purest-souled young woman of the tribe, using a rare crystal called the Sun's Tear. But one night, the crystal mysteriously disappeared. All arrows of suspicion pointed to the tribe's only stranger, Alara. On Jabari's face was the triumphant expression of a man who had found the opportunity he had been searching for. The disappearance of the Sun's Tear created a wave of fear and anger in the tribe. Jabari used this situation perfectly. "Here is the proof of her misfortune," he shouted in the council. "This foreigner has stolen our spirits from us." Although Nia tried to defend Alara, her words were weak without proof. The chief was crumbling under the pressure of his people. Finally, he had to resort to an old and cruel tradition, the trial by fire. According to tradition, the accused had until sunset to find and return the lost sacred relic. If they failed, they would be exiled forever from the tribe's lands at the last light of the sun. This meant certain death in the desert. Alara had only a few hours, but she was not looking for a crystal. She was looking for a traitor. With the plant knowledge Nia had taught her and her own keen observation skills, she remembered seeing one of Jabari's closest men rubbing his hands with the rare shadow leaf just before the ceremony, a leaf that caused a slight burn on the skin. This leaf was used to protect the leather in which the crystal was kept from scent and moisture. Alara secretly followed the man and saw him hiding the crystal in a rock crevice under the river. However, the man noticed her and attacked. Alara was not a warrior, but desperation had given her courage. During the struggle, she grabbed the water flask from the man's belt and threw it into a nearby fire. An alcoholic beverage inside the flask instantly flared up, distracting the man. In those few seconds, Alara grabbed the crystal and ran towards the tribe's square. As the sun set on the horizon, Alara reached the square, breathless, and placed the crystal at the chief's feet. While the people cheered, she said, "The thief," and pointed her finger at the man who still had faint burn marks on his hand. "He is Jabari's man." Jabari's betrayal could not be proven, but it was revealed that his most loyal man was a thief. This was a major blow to his authority. As for Alara, she was no longer seen as just a refugee, but as one who delivered the spirit's justice. Alara's triumph only deepened Jabari's hatred. She had humiliated him in front of the people, and there had to be a price for that. He knew he had to devise a more sinister and deadly plan. He secretly sent scouts to gather information about Alara, the girl who had escaped from the slave market. He learned who Gideon was and how desperately he wanted Alara back. Jabari went to Gideon with an offer. "I will bring the girl to you," he said. "In return, I will take 5 of your best warriors and a crate of your guns." This was not just a move to get rid of Alara, but also to increase his own military power against Nia's wisdom. The deal was made. To execute his plan, Jabari waited for the tribe's annual hunting festival. This was a time when all the warriors left the camp for days. The village would be left with only women, children, and a few elderly guards. During the hunt, Jabari accidentally separated from his group and made his way towards the secret path that would lead Gideon's men to the village. But there was something he didn't know. Nia's heart had been filled with anxiety since the death of her daughter, and she knew better than anyone how dangerous Jabari's ambition could be. She had been suspicious of Jabari's strange behavior lately, and had asked her most trusted young hunter to follow him secretly. The young hunter saw Jabari meeting with Gideon and witnessed the treacherous deal. He rushed back to Nia. When the news reached the hunting camp, the chief and the other warriors set off to return to the village, but they might be too late. Meanwhile, Alara was teaching the children about edible plants in the forest, just as Nia had taught her. Suddenly, she froze with a sense of danger. The birds had fallen silent, and the wind carried a sinister whisper. At that very moment, Gideon and his men emerged from the trees. "The game is over, little bird," Gideon said with a triumphant smile on his face. Alara shielded the children behind her like a mother tiger, but they were outnumbered, and the village was completely defenseless. Just as Gideon reached out to grab Alara, a battle horn was heard from the depths of the forest, but this belonged neither to Nia's tribe nor to Gideon's men. It was the sound of a more ruthless and larger group of mercenaries hired by Alara's stepmother, Mala, to reclaim the inheritance. The three groups clashed in a hellish triangle in the middle of the forest. Gideon fought for his property, while Mala's soldiers were there for the inheritance. In the midst of this chaos, Alara and the children were trapped. But Alara was no longer the frightened girl from Gideon's mansion. It was time to use everything she had learned from Nia. She hid the children inside the nearest thorny bush and whispered to them, "Don't make a sound, no matter what." Then, she used a trick she had learned in her father's house. In a loud voice, as if commanding a large army, she began to shout in the tribal language, "Narrow the circle! Don't let them escape!" This confused both mercenary groups. They began to fight each other, thinking the other was the rival caught in the tribe's trap. This clever move bought Alara time. Just then, the chief and his warriors arrived in the valley. The scene they saw was horrific, but it was also an opportunity. Their enemies were destroying each other. When the battle was over, only a few wounded and exhausted mercenaries were left. Gideon and Mala's commander were among them. In front of the tribe, everything was confessed. Mala's plan of murder and theft, Jabari's betrayal. The chief turned to Jabari. "You," he said, "desired power but forgot honor. Your punishment will be to live as the most worthless member of this tribe for the rest of your life." Then he turned to Alara. His eyes shone with the pride a father feels for his daughter. "And you," he said, "were looking for a home, but you became a leader to a people." Nia came to Alara's side and hugged her. "I lost one daughter," she said, "but the spirits have given me a stronger one back." Years later, Alara used her father's inheritance to build a safe and prosperous living space for the tribe. But she did not rule with money. She ruled with wisdom and love. Together with Nia, they became the two mothers of the tribe. One day, her own daughter asked her, "What does it mean to be a true mother?" Alara looked at Nia, who was sitting beside her, and smiled. "To be a true mother," she said, "is not about blood ties, but about protecting the family you choose with your heart, no matter the cost." Alara had not only found a tribal mother, she had also become one of them.